Thank you. Welcome back to the 2022 KBRF Radio News Debate. My name is Sarah Duffy, and I will be your moderator. Today's debates will include candidates for the City of Fergus Falls City Council positions for Wards 1 and 4. We just heard from our Ward 1 candidates, and we will now hear from our Ward 4 candidates. The City of Fergus Falls is comprised in 4 wards. Each ward has a total of 2 council members, with a total of 8 council members serving on the City Council. Ward 1 includes the southeast part of the city. Ward 2 is the northeast sector of the city. Ward 3 is the northwest part of the city, and Ward 4 is comprised of the southwest portion of Fergus Falls. Each council member serves a 4-year term. Again, today we have heard from our Ward 1 candidates, and right now we will hear from our Ward 4 candidates, and tomorrow we will have our Ward 2 and Ward 3 candidates. Tomorrow's debate is at the same time from noon to 1 right here on KBRF 1250, or you can come in person to the council chambers here at City Hall. The election for these offices will be held on Tuesday, November 8th in the City of Fergus Falls between the polling place hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. The polling place for Ward 1 is the Fergus Falls Public Library Community Room, and the polling place for Ward 4 is located at the Bigwood Event Center. We will now hear from our Ward 4 candidates. This debate will be 30 minutes in length. At the outset, I would request that our candidates and everyone in the audience be respectful to one another. To ensure a fair and objective debate, our questions have been sent to all of the candidates ahead of today. I will not be taking any questions from the audience. We will open each debate by providing the candidates with 2 minutes to provide an opening statement. We will then go into our questions. Each candidate will be provided 2 minutes to answer each question. If one of you would like to provide a rebuttal answer to a question, please just raise your hand indicating that to me, and I will give you 30 seconds for a rebuttal answer. After our question, each candidate will be given 2 minutes for a closing statement. We will be using a 2-card system today. We will hold up a yellow card to indicate 60 seconds remaining and a red card to indicate fewer than 10 seconds remaining. All time limits will be enforced, so please adhere to these guidelines. Lastly, to be heard by the audience beyond the debate room here, know that the microphones will only amplify sounds directly in front of them. Please ensure that the microphone is facing you and that you are speaking loudly and within a reasonable distance from the microphone. Now that we have laid the foundation for the basic procedure for today's debate, we will begin hearing from our Ward 4 candidates. Our Ward 4 candidates today include Scott Rachels and Spencer McGrew. I will start with Mr. Rachels for an opening statement, and then after opening statements, I will alternate between the two of you as to who answers first. Mr. Rachels.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for Leighton Broadcasting for doing this. My name is Scott Rachels. Lived in Fergus Falls all my life. I'm married to a nice gal named Cindy, and I have a daughter, Megan, and I have a daughter, Megan, and I have 2 grandsons, Landon and Trey, or Trey's son, I should say. I own Scott's Machine Shop. I've been in business for 20 years. Owning a small business in this town has been a challenge, not because of the city. It's because of the things we have to do in this town. So I was on the city council for 8 years, from 2010 to 2018 in Ward 2, and I was on the planning commission from 2010 to 2018 to 2020. So there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. McGrew.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Dave Bishop and KBRF for putting this together and organizing it, and to the listening audience in the room and also over the air. My name is Spencer McGrew, and I was born in Fargo, North Dakota, but grew up in Holly, Minnesota, so go Nuggets, about 40 miles north of here. I studied history in college and then geography as well. Currently, I manage Otter Tail County's Aquatic Invasive Species Prevention Program, so I'm quite familiar with government and how well it works, as also how slow it can be at times. So public service has always been a calling of mine. I live on South Cascade, with my wife Michelle and our son Ashton, and our cat Otto. Lots of fun, those two. And my hobbies include hiking, fishing, and I volunteer at the Western Minnesota Steam Threshers Union up in Rolog, Minnesota.
Thank you.
And we're neighbors.
And we're also neighbors.
That's an
It's
interesting
true.
dynamic.
Whoever wins will know who to talk to, right?
Right. All right, we'll start with our first question. And this question will go to Mr. Rachels first. If elected, what are your top 3 goals for your term, and how do you plan to achieve these goals?
Well, the top 3 goals I have are the streets, our taxes, and our bringing people to Fergus for our labor force. So I'll start with taxes. I think we need a 5-year plan of taxes. I know a 5-year plan for the streets. I know that the council worked on a franchise thing, and it kind of got shut down really quick. And I don't think that that's the best way to do it, but I think the communication has to keep going on it. We need to start on it instead of kicking it down the road like it's been done for the last 4 years. And so I believe that there's a plan out there. People have to understand that these streets are our streets. We have to pay for our streets, and I don't want to pay any more taxes than anybody else, but that's what it's going to have to come down to. The second thing is taxes. We have a huge roadblock coming ahead of us with Otter to Power leaving, the power plant being gone, and that's about 8% of our tax revenue that we have in the city, and we have to replace that somehow or make cuts, and it's going to be a challenge for 2023. Because in '24, that's when that happens. And the other thing we have to pay for is the 2 new park, or the 1 park, or whatever you want to call it, Phase 1 and Phase 2, and that's going to come up next year for bonding to pay for that. So that's going to be a challenge, and I think that's a huge thing we got to do and a goal we have to work on. And last thing, getting people to come to our town for workforce. We have a shortage of people. We need people. I need people. My friends that own businesses, we're all looking for help, and how do we do that? And I don't know how a council can do that, but it's something we need to look at as a goal.
Thank you. Mr. McGrew?
Thank you. Really, my priorities are very similar to what you'll hear from Scott and all the other candidates that are running for city council. We need to expand the tax base, taxes to fixing the roads. If we spread that load out, there will be a smaller increase for families and individuals, right? But we need to expand that tax base. So how do we expand the tax base? We need to expand through fair and flexible zoning, I believe, to get businesses that want to come in here and move to Fergus Falls and start one. We need to make it straightforward for them, continue to make it straightforward for them. We need to think about what it means to have a housing get proper housing for folks that are going to take these jobs, right? And what does that look like? And that comes back to the fair and flexible zoning policies. Single-family residential makes it quite difficult to bring in people if there's a housing shortage, right? So we have a job shortage and a housing shortage, and both of those are preventing us from really getting our tax base established. If we address those two things, it'll take, the citizens and the business community to do that. The council exists really to guide the policy of the city, but I think with a good guidance of policy, the jobs and the workers and the homes will find us.
Thank you. We will come back to Spencer for our next question. What do you feel are the biggest challenges facing the city currently, and what do you plan to do to address these challenges?
Sure, the challenges are the challenges that you'll hear from everyone. It is the roads, it is the infrastructure, but it is also the workforce, right? And the housing issue. The city needs growth through a workforce and a reason for people to come here to live, but also to work, and then also to recreate and play, right? And good school systems for them. Now, there's a school board that handles all that. Again, I have to reinforce that the goal of the city council is to essentially legislative, right? Set a budget, set priorities, set ordinances or laws, local laws, to facilitate those things. But really, we live in this democracy where it's up to us to decide where we want to live, where we want to work, and see those things through. So really, the challenge is something that I think we can rise to.
Thank you. Mr. Rachels?
Everybody wants to answer it the same. The biggest challenge, I believe, is to keep the council focused on that we're a service business, serving our citizens, and we have to focus on that. I mean, not that I don't want to have businesses come to town, but we have to focus on our citizens, and we give money to Greater Fergus Falls. I mean, we have different aspects of the budget to give money out to let those people do our jobs of getting people to come to town. The other thing is our ordinances to make it easier for the builders to come to town, and instead of kind of having our arms crossed and say, what do you need? We should have our arms open and say, what can we do for you to come and build? And what we can do to make it easier for you to do it. You still have to follow the same rules, but just how can we help you through this? And I know there's challenges from years when I was on the council of different things that were tough. And look at ordinance, you just have to look at those, and I think that that's the huge part of it, of the challenges. And of course, the taxes coming up, like I mentioned earlier, with the auditor power being gone and with the downtown, our taxes are going to change. We got to look at it hard, and we're going to have to spend probably the year of '23 to decide, because we have to decide the budget by by September 15th, I believe. And so we have to get that much time to get it. You got 7 months or 8 months to get it done, and it's going to take some time to get this figured out. I don't want to pay any more taxes, and I don't think anybody else does, but we have to do something.
Perfect. We will come back to Mr. Rachels for our third question. On the Tuesday, November 8th general election ballot, residents of Fergus Falls will be asked to determine whether or not a local option sales tax should be implemented for, 1, an outdoor aquatic center, 2, Day Lagoon Park improvements, both of these projects, or neither of these projects. What is your position on these specific improvements and our overall maintenance and improvements of the city's parks and green spaces?
Both projects are a great project. I think they're a great need for our city. People have been asking us for the pool for years, and I think it's something that's going to have to come to town. The campground, the same thing. There's no camping. I think Otter Tail Lake is the closest campground, and we have nothing anywhere in the area. And being part of the Elks, we have a campground out there. We used to have camping, but we went on to seasonal, so that venue is gone. The campground will pay for itself, I believe, over the years. The water park will be a challenge of how much it's going to cost to run that thing, and they're expensive. And owning a pool for 17 years, I know how much it costs to run a pool. So, but they're great projects, and the best part is the citizens get to vote on this. And I believe that that's the best thing about it. If they vote them through, we have to wrap our arms around it, whether you voted for it or against it, and work together to make them both very good and complete. Our park systems are great. I've always liked our parks. They're expensive, and some people talk about how expensive they are, but it's a very good asset to our city, and you just have to watch your budget, and there's a gentleman sitting over here that does that, does a very good job of it. And so I just believe that there's something, I don't think we need any more parks. People will talk, I said, but just maintain what we have and move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McGrew.
The wonderful thing about these ballot measures is that they are on the ballot. These were developed. There's been studies done on it, and we'll know one way or another what happens with these projects on November 8th. I assume we'll probably hear about it right away. I think the turnout will be wonderful this election season. I do support both projects. Otter Tail County, zooming out, is 2,000 square miles in size, 62 townships. There's 1,048 lakes, but there are only 3 public beaches in the entire county. So if you don't have access to a lake cabin, and many folks don't, your choices are Pebble Lake, Eagle Lake Township has a park south of Battle Lake, and then there is a public beach in the city of Battle Lake. Aside from that, you'll need to find a cabin to go to. So I think having a pool is a wonderful thing. Cities around us have pools, and they really benefit their community. But there's that cost portion to it, right? It is expensive. Chlorination of a pool, maintenance of a pool. All those things have to be taken into account. But as Scott said, we've got a wonderful finance department here, a wonderful highway department and public works department that keeps those things in good hands. But we'll know one way or another this November 8th.
Thank you. We'll come back to you, Mr. McGrew, for our next question. Roads and infrastructure have been a big topic for Fergus Falls residents for the past several years. What is your understanding of how road projects are planned and funded and how the city council is involved or not involved in making these decisions?
Sure. Roads are a basic infrastructure item that we have that needs to be taken care of. We live in a climate, I studied geography, and you don't need to be a geographer to notice this. You can just look at, it gets cold in the winter and warm in the spring, and especially in the wintertime when it warms up and freezes, it damages the roads. So it's an ongoing issue to maintain the roads. Fortunately, as I said in my previous answer, we have an excellent city engineering department that are qualified and knowledgeable and provide recommendations on which roads need to be worked on. And then there's a democratic process to it as well. If the experts say that this road is failing and this should have a higher priority, a citizen or a group of citizens can come together and say, hey, you know what, our road is in tough shape, we need to do a special assessment. So it really comes down to people choosing what to value and how to prioritize it, right? Money essentially does talk to fix these roads. And I think that's the way it ought to be. So you have experts that are planning it, but you also have that process where citizens can get together and say, you know what, our street is in bad shape. We need to really, increase the priority. So yeah, I would say that, I hear the complaints about the roads. I drive on them myself. It's a tough nut to crack, but we just need to keep after them.
Thank you. Mr. Rachels?
It seems the roads are a real common question. And the best thing I can say is the council has a final say in the roads, what gets done, what doesn't, but they have to keep a budget, and we have to make sure the taxes, it's the taxpayer's going to pay for it. But we're not the only city in the area or in the state that are fighting taxes. Our roads are old like everybody else's. They're just getting to that point, and now it's come to a head, and we need to figure this out. So the best thing is to understand about it is, yes, the staff will tell us what the roads are the worst if they want us to assess a road, or if people want to come and assess them for a road, that's the easiest. Well, I shouldn't say the easiest, but it's one of the best ways to do it because they want it. So my understanding on the streets, and it's hard to, because I've dealt with it when I was in the council earlier, is the taxes have to go up to pay to make the roads. And what happens now, this last year, they pulled it back because the oil went through the roof and they just couldn't afford it. And it's very smart of them to do that, save it for this year. Hopefully everything will come down. But the taxpayer has to pay for that, and how we get to that point is really tough. The county already has a half-cent sales tax on us. And we won't be able to do that, of course, but we just have to do the best way we can, or do it the best way we can, the economical way, and get as much as we can get done, and not just kick it down the road and say, we'll work on this next year. We just can't do it. We have to stop and get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with Mr. Rachels for our last question today. We all want to have pride for our city. What do you think are the greatest assets of Fergus Falls, and what do we need to do to keep moving forward and progressing?
There's a lot of great assets in this town. I talked about this last night. The hospital, we have a great hospital, we have a great school district, we have a great city council, we have a great city staff, we have a great city period, and the best thing, I think Krista talked about it, was the city people. The people of the city step up. When something needs to be done in the city, the people step up and we get it done. And that's the best part about it. And open communication with these people who help out is awesome. And now with Gene coming on, I didn't know that. That was a good thing. I've known Gene for years. Communication with the citizens and getting it out, this biggest thing. Well, I didn't know that, and I didn't know this. And the only time they hear anything is either on the radio or on the newspapers. And the communication has to become a lot better, because people expect to know it now. If you don't have a phone with you or see it on the internet, you don't think it's out there, or you don't know what's going on, and you got to search for it. And it's there if you want to look for it, but just got to make it easy to find is what we got to do. And I think that'll be Gene's job, to make it easier to find. So there you go. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. McGrew.
Our greatest asset is our people. We live in a massive country, right? 300 million people live in the United States, I think about 350 million. And we've got about 14,000 that have chosen to live here in Fergus Falls. And they chose because they like it, they like the environment, they like their neighbors, and they have a sense of pride in their community, right? We could live anywhere we want. I could live anywhere I want. So could everyone in this audience and in this listening audience. But we chose to settle here, right? We need to encourage that. We need to champion that. We're all in this together. We just need to make our decisions for the common good And I think the best way to do that is to put it to the people. They know their business. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will now go to our closing statements. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to provide a closing statement and tell why voters should vote for you. We will start with you, Mr. McGrew.
Thank you. Voters should vote for me because I plan to vote for me. No. I decided to run for city council because I found myself reading the news and or being frustrated driving down the roads, like, and just complaining, right? And finding myself griping. And I thought to myself, I can't just do this. I can't just complain. I need to step up. So I decided to step up and begin this campaign. And I want to do, listen to folks and really put their priorities, are essentially my priorities. I think they should be the city's priorities. We're a legislative body. We've got a city staff that executes the policy that we outline, and I just want to be part of that decision-making process. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rachels.
I started, I wasn't going to, when I was living in Ward 2, I wasn't going to run anymore again, and but I moved over here, and the neighbors talked to me about different things and why I wanted to do this, or if I should get back in it again, and so I thought, my wife was a big help to me. She said, you need to run again, so I decided to go again, run again, and the big thing for me is the communication, getting back to the people. Being able to, I see a lot of people every day, and being on the council for those 8 years was a great thing. People still have my number. I still get calls from different people where I used to live. And so I think that experience of that is a good reason for me to run. And my experience of being a small business owner, I don't think there's any small business, Justin I think was the one, but a small business owner is looking at how things work in their lives and how you can bring that into the life of the city. And so I just, I think it'd be a great thing to get back on the council and serve the council again. I look forward to serving Ward 4, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you for your responses today, respecting each other, and really actually stepping up to serve the city of Fergus Falls. We need people like you to step up for service. And as I mentioned before, oftentimes it's a thankless job, and people do it for others, and so it's a great thing. We will be back tomorrow, as I previously mentioned, with our Ward 2 and Ward 3 candidates from noon to 1, right here on News Talk 1250 KBRF, and that will conclude today's debate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Spencer.